Welcome back to CryptosRUs. I'm George. We're all George. Good morning. Welcome to another Market Open stream. And today, of course, let's talk about what's going on in the world of banks, finance, Bitcoin. And I'm going to make the case why Bitcoin is your shield against the tyranny of the central banks. And we have a lot more central bank bailouts to discuss today. So let's talk about everything and let's get started. Welcome, guys. U.S. market is opening in the red today. We're flip-flopping. We go red, green, red. Why is it red today? Well, more fears about banks and what the ECB just did in regards to everything. What am I talking about? Well, first, this was reported last night. So it's not just the Fed that's doing a lot of bailouts these days. The National Bank of Switzerland, Swiss National Banks, confirms it will provide massive liquidity to Credit Suisse. $54 billion to be exact. Right? We know. We've been hearing about Credit Suisse having problems. A lot of bad investments over the past few years. Lost tens of billions of dollars. Lost consumer confidence. Its stock is tanking. Yet despite all of that, they are deemed just too big to fail at this point. So the Central Bank of Switzerland decided to give them a huge cash injection. Now, if they run through that $54 billion injection, I don't know if they're going to get another one. That is quite a large bailout, right? And of course, when you have large injections like that, it's going to affect things. It doesn't come without repercussions. So I decided to look up, what is the inflation rate of Switzerland right now? Well, it's better than the U.S. It's at 3.4%, but you can see that is still near its high point. If you go back, let's say 5 years, at one point they were negative in deflation mode. That's not a good thing, actually. But, traditionally Switzerland has been pretty low, about 0 or 1%, until recently. Started coming up, and it is toward its high right now at 3.4%. Now, is this cash injection going to push things higher? I don't know. Maybe if they don't have money, just like the U.S., and they need to print more money. But then again, Switzerland, I believe they're using the euro. And then, you know what? This just came out. ECB just decided to raise rates by 50 basis points. So this is the other thing that's happening this morning that's causing banks to collapse, basically. A lot of European banks, their stocks are getting hammered because of this. I mean, this is to be expected, okay? The ECB, they have been really, really behind with the rate hikes. Nowhere close to what Fed Powell has done. So obviously they need to continue going. They can't stop like Powell. They can't slow down. So, I mean, I don't know. This was not a surprise, but apparently, based on how the markets are reacting, it is. But we know inflation is high, not just in Switzerland, in all Eurozone. You look at everywhere, Germany, Italy, everywhere inside Europe, of course, UK, inflation is still quite high, right? So we have this conundrum where the central banks, they are still trying to defeat inflation through their rate hikes, yet they are providing bailouts to the banks, which require them to print more money. So do you see the conundrum there? They are going against what they're trying to do, which is ultimately to bring inflation down. But you can't do that if you keep printing more money, right? So what do you do? What do you do? I don't know. I don't know. And it's the same thing. I mean, same thing everywhere. We're hearing a lot about it in the U.S. First Republic Bank, right? A lot of crazy swings. We had a minus 60 or 70% day with their stock, then plus 60%. Now they're falling 35% once again because people are starting to understand maybe there are some banks you're not supposed to bail out. Maybe not everything should be bailed out. Maybe if a mismanaged bank has mismanaged billions of billions and tens of billions or hundreds of billions of assets, maybe we should not trust them, even with a bailout. We know at First Republic just got a bailout too. They got a huge injection and a loan, and I think JP Morgan also gave them a loan. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that was thrown at them, right? But people are still distrusting of banks, right? And all this, where's the money coming from? Again, out of thin air. So now it's being reported that this emergency Fed facility program, this new loan program for the banks, could cost the U.S. another $2 trillion. Not just a few billion. Billions means nothing these days. Not just 10 billion, not just 100 billion. We're talking about another possible $2 trillion being created and being loaned out to the banks. So you tell me how inflation is ever going to come down when we have to print trillions upon trillions upon trillions upon trillions every single year. It's not even like we're waiting 10 years. We just printed like 6 trillion the last 2 years. Now we have to print another 2 trillion just as a loan to the banks, and that's on top of our deficit this year, which is already $2 trillion. So that's another 4 trillion. You see how it's getting out of hand. So this the tyranny of central banks, it is real. It's real, right? And basically it's making everyone more broke. I mean, your money, even though you have a lot of it or maybe little of it, it's just being devalued to nothing, right? It's wild. It's wild. It feels like 2008 again for those of you guys that lived through 2007, 2008, 2009 and what happened, right? It feels a lot like that again. Like, you know, mismanagement of money, mismanagement of funds, highly leveraged banks. They're going under, but the Fed and central banks around the world are trying to cover up for them because they are deemed too big to fail. If they fail, it's just too disastrous, right? So now they're in this position where they have to save them. And here's something else too. There's an anti-crypto agenda going on right now because while some of these banks are being saved, they're being told you can't have any crypto relationships or crypto business, which I don't even know how that's legal. I don't think that is actually legal. And, you know, unfortunately, these banks that went under, they can't really defend themselves in court because they're out of money. But look at this. Signature Bank is up for sale. And FDIC says whoever wants to buy them cannot be involved with any crypto business. How? You know, why? Why? Right? I mean, you have other big banks fail that has nothing to do with crypto. And you could argue Signature Bank or Silvergate, these guys, even though they're crypto friendly, that's not ultimately the reason why, like, they lost out and they went under. It's not like they committed fraud like SBF and FTX, right? They may have loaned out money, but still, you can't do this. That just seems totally illegal, but no one's fighting it right now, right? So there does seem to still be an anti-crypto stance right now, even though some of these banks that are failing have nothing to do with crypto. For example, SV Bank. SV Bank has nothing to do with crypto. And it has everything to do with actually bonds. Because the problem SV Bank had was they held on all these bonds that they couldn't cash out. You would think by buying bonds, you're buying cash, right? But their bonds were not set to mature until 10 years, 20 years later, and their interest rates are so low versus now, no one wanted them. That's why the Fed actually had to create a loan program so that you could put down your bonds as collateral to borrow against, yet the Fed has no money to begin with. That's why they issued the bonds. So now the Fed is loaning out money that they borrowed from people that need it now. That doesn't even make any sense, but it operates because they have a money printer, and now they're going to print maybe another $2 trillion just to cover this new Fed facility program. I mean, just think about it, all right? Just take a minute and think about what's going on here. And it should make you angry. It should make you turn to Bitcoin, because who wants to be part of this, you know? Who really wants to be part of this? I mean, I made this example before, okay, in real layman's terms, how the Fed or a U.S. government operates. Let's say I'm the U.S. government and I need money. So I go to you and say, hey, I need to borrow $100, okay? But if you give me $100, I'm going to write on a sheet of paper, I owe you, right? And every year, I'll pay you interest. I'll pay you 4% interest. I'll give you $4 a year, okay? And in 10 years, you can get your $100 back, and plus you've collected your 4% interest every year, right? It's a win-win scenario. And you're like, sure, I'll give you the $100. I take the IOU. Now somehow you go into bankruptcy. You're like, I need money, right? And I go back to you and say, oh, okay, no problem, no problem. You give me your IOU back, and I will loan you $100 back, right? And you know what? You just need to pay me a little more interest, right? But I borrowed that 100 from you to begin with because I didn't have it. So how do I give it back to you as a loan, right? The only reason I could do that is if I have a money printer and I could print more money and give that to you. And then this is a small example. Think about if it's times however many banks out there, right? Like it doesn't make sense. That shouldn't be. Anyways, I rambled on enough. So we know the ECB just raised rates, even though you have central banks still printing out money like the Swiss National Bank, right? In the U.S., there's still a 30% chance this next FOMC meeting, which is coming up very fast next week, right? 0% is a possibility. There's a 30% chance. This is swinging wildly, by the way. It was like 50% just like an hour ago. Now it's down to 30%. I guess this is based on what the ECB just did. But this is swinging wildly. But I'm still thinking it's going to be 0. I think it's going to be 0. And as we get closer and closer, this probability will probably go up, right? I just don't see how Fed Powell could be that hawkish. I just don't. I can't see it with all these bank failures and collapses and weakness overall with banks, or distrust in banks overall, right? Remember, the Fed has to instill confidence in banks, right? The Federal Reserve is a gigantic bank. It's a central bank, right? So you have to give this, you have to reassure people that you could trust banks. People can't lose faith in banks. That's the thing. If they do, it'll be a giant collapses around the world, basically. So he has to help the banks. So keep that in mind. But that doesn't mean you have to be in the banks or trust the banks. You could still opt out of the banks by buying Bitcoin. All right. Cathie Wood also agrees. What I just talked about with FDIC, with like SV Bank, right? I mean, it's just unfortunate that despite the fact we have a lot of weakness and fears right now, there's an agenda to drive out, again, crypto from the U.S., trying to hinder it. So now, besides just fighting Gary Gensler of the SEC, now we got to fight like the FDIC too. Like, it really makes no sense that they can deem if someone buys, let's say, Signature Bank, they can't have any crypto ties or do any crypto business. Who are they to demand it, right? So why don't they shut down like SV Bank for, being irresponsible by buying all these federal bonds, right, that they can't sell? Well, of course, they're not going to say that, okay? Because the Fed and FDIC, they're buddies, okay? You can't say that. Why don't you say, oh, banks can't put so much money into bonds, right? Is there a rule of how much bonds you could buy with your assets? No. But SB Bank going under should make people question, like, how much in bonds you could buy as a bank. Is anyone asking that question? No. But yet, they're trying to target crypto companies. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? Hopefully all this anti-crypto stuff that's in the U.S. doesn't completely drive out innovation from the U.S. If it happens, that just means crypto will thrive elsewhere in the world. But right now, we got a lot of anti-crypto people right now, mostly I think to protect the banks. Mostly, I think it's due to that, just to protect the banks and financial systems that already exist. But you know what? You can only hold the population down for so long before everyone stands up and rises against the tyranny that's happening, right? So right now, it's been reported that since the collapse of SVB Bank and everything else, you have 70,000 Bitcoin that has been removed and put into self-custody, right? I mean, you could see that that's an enormous amount. The orange line is the liquid supply, meaning Bitcoin removed from the exchanges and being put into like a cold wallet, for example, or wallet that you control, right? And of course it makes sense because people want to opt out. People want to be in control of their own crypto and not depend on a centralized entity like a bank or even an exchange, right? Makes a whole lot of sense. And of course, Bitcoin is still doing really well. We're right under 25,000. So even though it looks bleak, it looks scary, not for Bitcoin. Bitcoin is actually gaining strength. Okay, so let's keep that in mind, and let's keep this in mind. If we follow some of the previous cycles, very good things are about to come. For example, the 2019 bottom, okay, after breaking out of that wedge, after consolidating a little bit, that's when things got really, really wild. And can we see that really wild moment this year? We'll see. I guess we'll see. All right, last two things. I guess this is good. Voyager, Binance.us. SEC is trying desperately to prevent this from happening. Their latest excuse is, oh, we can't prosecute Voyager or its security offerings or the people involved because if Binance.us buys them out, we can't do that. And the judge is like, that's total nonsense. That's just an excuse. You could clearly still go after the people, even if Binance.us is going to buy them out, which is why the judge is like, no, we're not halting this deal anymore. It's going to go through, right? Again, the SEC is throwing everything out there. There's an anti-crypto stance, like I said, but I'm glad to see some objectivity because the judge is like, SEC, you're just like not proving anything. You're throwing a lot of accusations, but nothing really makes sense or sticks, right? So it's good. Even though this is a small win against the SEC, we need more wins like this to build up. Still waiting for Grayscale to win their lawsuit against the SEC in regards to the Bitcoin spot ETF being denied over and over and over again and their reasoning for that. And of course, waiting for Ripple to win their lawsuit against the SEC. So there's a lot of big cases following this, but I'm glad to see someone having some success. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And lastly, a lot of you guys are SHIB fans, right? But there is some controversy right now with the new Shibarium beta test. I thought it was actually a mainnet. It's my fault. It's a public beta test, and there's some drama like a code ID somehow matches some other chain. So people are thinking this is a fork chain. But then, you know, the main developer, SHIB, is saying, no, it's not. It's just an accidental mistype. Whatever. There's a lot of controversy over it, right? I'm sure it'll be fixed. Nothing to be panicking about. This is still public beta, so there's still time for them to fix whatever it needs to, right? But this could be the reason why SHIB and Bone has been more weak as of late, probably because of all the controversy. All right, that's pretty much it today. Again, more red, more fears about banks, more fears about inflation and rate hikes, the usual stuff, right? But it's not going to get any better if there's more and more and more bailouts and more money being printed. It's that simple. It's that simple. All right, let's do some Q&A. All right, Anthony, new member, welcome. Ray K says you can't bail out banks then raise rates. Oh, you certainly can. Oh, you certainly can. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but you certainly can. Let's see here. Lunch will cost $20 for hot dogs. It's pretty much there. There's a lot of restaurants. You get a nice hot dog and it's like $10. Opinion Avalanche, does it have a bright future? Yes, I do think so. My daughter and other family asked me to teach them about fractional reserve banking. They all thanked me after and put some money into Bitcoin ETH last week. I hope that's a true story. And I'm not the most intelligent guy on this. I'm sure there are a lot more people that are more knowledgeable with how our fractional banking system works. But the little that I know already makes me question it. And, you know, the whole thing just seems like it's an unsustainable system. But because it's a system that we have and because it's the government, you know, no one just like questions it, right? Like it's not something that could be easily fixed, and the people in power doesn't really want to fix it. It's all temporary band-aids. So the long-term fixes are deemed too difficult. Let's just put it down the road and let the future generation worry about it. I mean, that's essentially what's happening. And it has been happening, not just with the U.S., with all fiat currencies, until they fail and something else comes out. That's how it's always been. Is synthetic injected a good hold? Your thoughts? Does Render have a future? You're asking a whole bunch of loaded questions, okay? It's not whether something is a good hold. Is it going to do well and outperform its peers? That's more important. So I don't like synthetic because it allows you to create security tokens, which the SEC will go after if you're in the U.S. But still, that's ultimately what they do. Injected protocol is a derivatives DEX. If you like derivatives, then okay. But leverage has wrecked more people than has helped. And does Render have a future? Maybe. Who knows? Who knows? Tim, I already covered that. I covered this already. Big Macs are the size of old cheeseburgers. Yeah, that's right. if you look at the patties at Big Macs, they are extremely, extremely small. So even though Big Macs have gotten more expensive, but what McDonald's and others have done is shrink their patties now so that it's not like $10 for a Big Mac. Although you just buy like a normal sandwich without the meal, even from McDonald's, it's like $7, or $6, I should say, with the smaller patties. Now a meal is like 10 or $11, so I still remember back in the day when I was like a teenager, probably even after a teenager. You know, I remember you get like 5 for $5 Whoppers. You guys remember those days? And Whoppers were huge back in the day. Okay, Whoppers were huge, and I remember those 5 for $5s or 5 for $5 Arby's roast beef sandwiches, right? And back then, those roast beefs were like all half pounds. Now that's, forget about it. You get a half pound Arby's sandwich, it's like $10 alone, right? You get a Whopper, at best you get like, what, 2 for $6 or 2 for $8, and the Whopper size has shrunk so much over the years. They're not the same. Chris says everyone here has a bank account. Hard to imagine a complete shift away from banks without everything collapsing. That's right. That's why everyone is so afraid. That's why bank runs are so damaging. Because when people are afraid, they take everything out, and these banks, they absolutely collapse immediately. And one bank leads to another, another. That's why bailouts happen. And they happen very quickly because they know how damaging that is. And the whole system could collapse within a matter of days if they don't plug it. Devon, I agree with you on Gala, but not AMP. I think AMP is, I don't know. I don't know if they have a future, to be honest. Grew up in the 90s. I remember $1 gas. I do remember that. And 25-cent cheeseburgers. I'm trying to think if I remember 25-cent cheeseburgers. I've always remembered dollar cheeseburgers and dollar daily doubles from McDonald's. I don't know about 25-cent cheeseburgers. Maybe. I still remember this hack I learned about McDonald's, and it could still be true. I don't know if they got rid of it. You know how there's a lot of like hacks that you could figure out with food? I remember I used to piss off all the McDonald's. When McDonald's had, their double cheeseburgers or daily doubles, it's just plain with nothing, right? So they had come out with some other burger that was very similar to the Whopper. Basically, it was loaded with lettuce, cheese, tomatoes, mayonnaise. I forgot what burger it's called. I don't even know if it exists, but it was like a fully loaded double cheeseburger. But it cost more. It was like $1 versus like $1.75, something like that. But the thing is, McDonald's doesn't charge for like add-ons. They don't charge you for adding lettuce or tomatoes or mayonnaise, right? So I would say, hey, a double cheeseburger, but build it like this other sandwich. I forgot the name. And then the person would say, well, why don't you just order that burger? I'm like, well, because I don't want to pay the extra 75 cents. And then they thought about it. They didn't like it, but there's nothing they could do. So then they just built a double cheeseburger like that burger. Because they don't charge for the extra stuff that you add on, right? So I don't know if that still exists. That could. I hear a lot of restaurants don't charge for certain add-ons, so you can just add on whatever you want. They also spit in it. Maybe they did. Maybe they did, but I still enjoyed it. Yeah, was it McArch? I mean, there was some burger that was like very similar to the Whopper, but I don't know if they have it anymore. Is there any hope for Helium? I don't know. Helium got a lot of hate because they decided to switch to Solana. Some people think that they were forced to do that, right? And then Solana got really bad because of the FTX collapse, right? And then I don't know what happened since then. Seemed like they came back, but then recently Binance.us decided to list them. So that's curious. If Binance.us all of a sudden decides to delist them, it's possible that they think that SEC is targeting them. I don't know. I think that's what happened. Late 90s, McDonald's had 29-cent burger on Tuesdays and 35-cent cheeseburgers on Wednesday. Man, those were the days, I guess. I guess I never took advantage when burgers were that cheap, but that movie about McDonald's with Michael Keaton, that was really good. That was very good. Shows how that Ray Kroc guy, who eventually became CEO and took over, shows how brilliant yet also I don't know, devious, evil, a man without morals. I don't know how you want to define him, but what he did was kind of genius. He actually was like one of the oldest people to become a billionaire, because I think he joined McDonald's in his 50s, and then eventually he became a billionaire after he turned like 70s or 80s. Top 3 burger joints. Well, I will say I enjoy, you can never go wrong with burgers from Culver's. I think Culver's is really good. Five Guys is also really good, but Five Guys, their prices are ridiculous. It's like $12 for a burger. Oh, they're also one of the ones that you could put unlimited toppings and add-ons, and I hear with Five Guys, you can add as much bacon as you want. I didn't know that. I just recently found out you could add as many slices of bacon as you want. So if you're paying $12 for a burger, you might as well ask for like 10 slices of bacon, and then you could just take them home if you wanted to. Or you could eat it all. But yeah, I like Five Guys, but you have to eat it there. You can't get a DoorDash, because if you do, it gets all soggy and it doesn't taste good. I don't know, other burgers that are really good that's considered fast food, like Portillo's is good. I think out of the major chains, I used to think Whopper was the best burger. Now I think Wendy's burgers are better. Wendy burgers are thicker, bigger, more tasty. Even a single Dave's Double or Dave's Triple gives you a lot more meat than, say, a Big Mac, of course, or Quarter Pounder, a double Whopper, right? I don't know. Whoppers have become really dry, in my opinion. I used to think Whoppers are the best fast food burger, but not anymore. I don't have Hardee's or In-N-Outs by me, so I can't say for sure. I don't have them often. I've had them before. I didn't think they were amazing. I think Culver's burgers are actually really good for those of you guys that have Culver's. You know, I do have Sonic by me, but I never eat at Sonic. I never want to. I don't know why. I just never had the urge to go to eat at Sonic's. I just called them to confirm. They said, yeah. To what, Jason? To what? Fuddruckers was the best, but they're not, obviously not a fast food place, but I don't know why they couldn't I don't know, keep up with the times, I guess, and they just went belly up, unfortunately. I don't think anyone should buy a burger from Dairy Queen. It just seems so wrong. I'm not a big chips guy, so I can't talk about chips. Oh, they still have Fuddruckers in Texas? Wow. I thought the whole company went under. But they're good. They're really good. Fresh burgers. You put on whatever toppings you want. I love their burgers. Huge. And it was decently priced before. It was still under $10 before. That's unfortunate. When am I starting a food channel? I'm not a food critic. Not a food critic. All right, guys, let's conclude this burger chat. You know, I said a lot at the beginning. Still a lot of banks, distrust in banks, central banks doing a lot of bailouts, right? Which is counterintuitive to decreasing inflation, right? But it's still happening. And there's just a lot of shenanigans going on. And the more you learn about it, the more you want to opt out and get into something better like Bitcoin. So let's end with that. Smash up the like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys tonight, 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And I may have 3 burgers at that time, and then I'll tell you exactly which one is best. Maybe, maybe not. All right, take care, guys. Bye-bye.